Time for round 2, everyone. The next part to my pre-Natlan meta tier list. My name is Juice and let's get into it. I want to quickly say a few things after part 1 has gone down. First off, the assumptions for the list is C0R1 for 5 stars and C6 4 stars. C6 4 stars, not C0. So it doesn't matter if a C0 official is better than a C0 Farazan, because that's not what I'm ranking. We're taking C6 into account here. Secondly, a biased tier list means that I'm putting characters that I like higher than characters that I don't like. I'm basing my rankings on my own gameplay experiences, which I mentioned in the last video as well. If this was skewed towards who I liked, then Ganyu may as well be S tier. If you have a problem with my rankings, please explain down below why. I can't grow without proper, solid criticism. Thirdly, when commenting, please consider the fact that accessibility is not a factor in these tier list rankings, which I mentioned in the first video as well. Aside from that, thank you to everybody who gave me respectful and insightful criticism on my last tier list. It's highly appreciated. Speaking of which, let's reshuffle a few of my previous rankings thanks to comments on my other video. I hear you, Eula's going to the bottom of C tier. Fine, I exaggerated how bad she is. By association, Fremine also moves up. Ayato moves up to the bottom of B tier. He's at least stronger than the majority of the characters down in C tier, and he can adapt to multi-wave a lot better than Sino can. Barbara moves down a tier, as while she is better than you might think, that doesn't suddenly make her solid on the whole. Both Kokomi and Fischl get moved up to the bottom of A tier due to their effective flexibility. And Alhaitham gets placed in front of the Pyro Plunge units. Thank you for your criticism, everyone. Now let's get into the rest of the tier list. Layla, she's good with Wanderer, but outside of that, she's outclassed as a cryo sustain by Charlotte, who can heal and apply more consistent cryo, plus Charlotte works with Farina, though Layla does have the second strongest shield in the game, which is pretty neat. C tier. Lisa can act as a free-to-play friendly Quicken option while also having some Hyper Bloom potential, plus she can act as an R5 TDDS holder in Eula teams. Though holy guacamole, she turns into an ER solar panel if you use TDDS on her. She is very outclassed, but will service you if you wish for her to. C tier. Lynette is a solid free Animo unit whose main use case is aggravate teams, but she's also a good Animo flex wherever you want to use her. C tier. I'm not sure why it's so controversial to say that Lyney is a top 3 DPS, because, well, he is. His vape teams are some of the strongest teams in the game, and even his Monopyro or Emily burning team variants aren't bad either. Lyney is genuinely a powerhouse, and for those of you who don't believe me, don't knock it till you try it. S tier. Mika is a decent Farina healer who can make Farina usable in Eula teams, but Charlotte is a much better cryo healer than him, and being tied to Eula isn't exactly what I'd call a blessing. Low B tier. Mona's kind of fallen off, since Ayaka has also fallen off. You only use Mona for damage per screenshot, and her ability to mess up vapes is really annoying. She'll soon be good for Mualani though, and while this is a 4.8 tier list, Mualani is literally coming out in a few days, so that does add some extra points to Mona. C tier. Nahida is Dendro. The only time you don't use Nahida is if you're using Emily. Otherwise, Nahida literally makes or breaks the entire Dendro element, and she'll also be gaining a use case in a few days with Mualani. She has stayed equally as good, if not has become better, ever since her release, and she is one of the safest investments that you could ever make. She's also good for quite a few A-tier DPSs, like Clorand and Alhaitham. S tier. A proper send-off! Navia is quite an incredible DPS, who by partitioning her nukes out into 2 separate blasts, manages to avoid the horrendous issue of overkill among nuke-based DPS units. She's amazing in both single-target and 2-target scenarios, and her DPS is on the whole really high-performing. She may be Geo, but you're seriously underestimating her if you're gonna write her off because of that. High A tier. Let the mighty be humbled! Veyudux. The reason why Nervalette is so good is because he can reach such smooth abyss clearing times with not that much investment required. He's dead easy to play, so it's hard to miss out on DPS with him, and he is amazingly effective in AoE while still having plenty of damage to deal with boss-heavy scenarios. He's also super easy to position and such. He presides over all of our DPS characters as of Genshin Impact 4.8, and he is undeniably a king. S tier, you could not go wrong pulling for this guy. Nilou has amazing AoE. She deals with it so fantastically. I also don't think she's as restrictive as people make her out to be because there's so many different Hydro and Dendro teammates at your disposal to build up a solid Nilou team comp. With that being said, the Abyss is a lot more boss-centric and 2 to 3 target-centric nowadays, so I can't put her anywhere above low A. She will serve insanely well in Imaginarium Theater, however. Ningguang's real best use case is being a TDDS holder in Navia teams. Otherwise, her DPS is too lackluster to focus on with all the other options that we've got nowadays. C tier. I have a very positive opinion of Noelle. She drives Furina excellently, and I don't see much talk passed around when it comes to the Noelle Navia Furina team. It's really nice because Noelle keeps her burst infusion even after you swap off of her, and then you can Navia nuke, set up Navia's burst, then head back to Noelle to keep up the team-wide healing and generating crystallize for Navia's next strike, all while Yelan and Furina put in their own handful of good work. High B tier, potential to be low A, honestly. Qiqi is garbage. I don't care if she has one decent physical team. That is not Cloran's best team by any means. She can at least heal, which helps Furina, and to be fair, the Cloran Qiqi team is still a fairly good physical team, so I'll put Qiqi at the top of D tier. Raiden Shogun. Okay, I just think she's mid. I've explained time and time again how her DPS is not much compared to modern Fontaine units, and we're talking about C0 5 stars here. A C0 Raiden is nowhere near Nervalette levels. She has utility and can drive teams such as Furina Yelan Double Hydro, but dude, Kokomi or Hu Tao can drive it better. There is always a replacement for Raiden, and she has simply fallen off. I do get that her ease of use is amazing, but even if I play a good character badly, I clear faster than playing Raiden well. She fell off. B tier. Razor's main use nowadays is in Thundering Fury. The team is decent enough, but pretty much anything else will be better. C tier. Rosaria is pretty much the best out of the reverse Melt gang. You use her for the same reason that you use Xiangling and Kaya, plus she can also work well in freeze as a sub DPS and physical thanks to her C6's physical res shred. C tier above the other 4-star cryo fellas. Kujou Sara is brilliant, mostly because Clorand is also brilliant. Clorand absolutely carries my opinion of her, as she helps her do really solid DPS numbers in hyper carry teams, and she can buff Raiden Hyper really solidly as well. Not to mention that Sara herself also does pretty cool sub DPS, high B tier. Sayu is a serviceable 4VV holding Animo, but happens to heal as well, so she's also good with Furina. She doesn't cleanse or apply Sunfire like Jean however, and Jean's healing is better on the whole, though Sayu isn't half bad, just outclassed, high C tier. Sethos, my goat! Okay, so my problem with the King Sethos is that he has a split kit, and both of those kits are not very good. For those who know what RR cancelling is, they literally removed his RR cancelling a patch after he came out. 4V uninitiated, basically a quickfire animation cancel he could do to change his position during a charge attack. And he still sucked DPS wise before, when he could still do it. My man also faces crazy competition with every other aggravate DPS ever, and there is pretty much no incentive to build him. Sethorian, the king of Genshin Impact, the legend of everything, goes into C tier, heck yeah. Shenhe is an amazing cryo buffer. Her problem is that she's tied to characters that are C tier. Her own meta ranking could easily rise once the value of Ayaka and Ganyu rise once more. C tier. Kuki is a nice Hyper Bloom healer who works wonders in all Hive-Sim Quick Bloom teams. A very good unit for that specific team, very cheap to equip as well, plus since she's a healer she allows all Hive-Sim to comfortably use Furina in his teams. A tier, near the bottom because most of the S tier DPSs outperform Hyper Bloom by quite a bit. Kuki is always going to be as good as Hyper Bloom is. Sigewinne is awkward. She is a good Furina Mono Hydra unit as she can buff the damage of Furina's 3 little guys, but Kokomi has a far longer field time than Sigewinne in that team, and Kokomi fits into the natural rotation of that team much more comfortably. Otherwise, Sigewinne has no real preferred use cases over other units, and she has some weird Bond of Life passive that does nothing for any character in her most common teams. C tier. Sucrose mostly works because she is a great EM sharer who can also hold 4VV, plus in Aggravate she can hold Haku Shinring. If you're playing in an Aggravate team with her, I do find that swirling Sucrose's burst for the extra 20% damage bonus is actually not that hard to do. It's harder if you're playing with Nahida though, since Nahida applies so much Dendro. Sucrose also has the potential to hold R5 TDDS, which is nice. B tier, mostly held back by playstyle clunk issues. Childe's ranking is always going to depend on how good International currently is. That team is still great, don't get me wrong, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't get massively outclassed during the Fontaine era of Genshin. There are simply cheaper and more effective teams now which yield more performance out while being easier to play. I still think International is really good, and when Wriothesely eventually comes out, if her uptime synergizes well with Childe, assuming she will work in Internet, then the team could see a very large return. But for now, I must set my Childe simping aside and be fair. He goes into the lower end of B tier. Thoma is a very nice Burgeon unit who is also a pretty good shielder for normal attack-based units. I haven't much else to add here other than he'll be able to work good with Mualani, who's coming out pretty soon. He's always going to be tied to how good Burgeon currently is. B tier. I think Tighnari's pretty good, pretty much a little better than Qiqi is my take. Also, he specializes in spread, which is pretty neat. Alhaitham does outclass him by quite a bit, which lowers Tighnari's value, but he's still highly formidable and worth your time in my opinion. B tier. Venti's a character who's a little underrated in my opinion. Not extremely underrated, like he isn't insane, but he's still decent. Like he can group pretty much any non-robot enemy and non-boss. He can actually group the Desert Doritos, who are robotic, and the Shadowy Husks, which are pretty large. Abyss Lectors too. He's bad in this current Abyss, but the last one for Lectors? Pretty cool. He's also insane in Imaginarium Theater. His main issue is more so that the Abyss has gotten extremely boss heavy over time, but he can also restore flat energy to the element that he absorbs with his burst, does good swirl damage, and can hold 4VV and Elegy, or even Favonius for greater batterying. Spectres and Kairagis are also groupable with Venti now, and they have been ever since Sumeru. B tier. Please consider my points and try him out again if you haven't touched him since Inazuma. Wanderer is a really strong Anemo DPS who simply hasn't fallen off since his release. He's doing very well for himself in terms of the meta, and his playstyle on the whole has aged quite well. A very capable DPS, so he goes into high A tier. Wriothesely! This vernacular beast is mostly carried by his melt team. His DPS is pretty good here. He honestly has the potential to go higher on this list, but this list assumes C0R1. I can't give Rio his C1 because he really wants it, because then I'd have to go and do that for others too, like Hu Tao and Shiori, which creates inconsistencies. He's the best cryo DPS in the game right now, and the fact that Rio is a mid DPS that uses Melt with a really solid team just goes to show how good Melt is the moment that a competent character gets to utilize it. B tier. Xiangling Paradise. Need I say more? Xiangling can either play as an amazing high-value pyro sub-DPS or as an ER bot to apply a lot of pyro where you need it, such as HP Vape teams or Chevrolet Overload teams. She happens to be good with a lot of really amazing characters too, such as fitting into mono pyro teams for Arlecchino and Lyney. Top of A tier. Scatter! Skyward! I consider Xianyun to be one of the best units in the entire game. Saved D-Look, amazing buffer for both Xiao and Ga-Ming, two of his game's most formidable DPS characters, offers Navia a plunging team archetype which ends up being her strongest, can act as a Kazuha alternative in teams such as Arlecchino Plunge Vape for example, and also replaces Jean aside from Sunfire and Cleansing, which she cannot do, but her insane healing more than makes up for it, not to mention the fact that Xianyun is the best Farina healer in the game in my opinion. She can also hold 4P Song of Days Past for even more team buffing. Easy S tier, a meta behemoth. Xiao is one of the strongest hypercarries in the game, especially thanks to Farazan and Xianyun. Farina also helped him out a lot too. His AoE is incredible, and Xianyun's buff is tailored to single target, so she covers for his single target boss scenarios as well, where Xiao is also highly formidable. His plunge numbers are simply nuclear. Try out a team of Xiao, Farazan, Farina, and Xianyun. You will be amazed. The only thing I want to point out is that this tier list is not accounting for accessibility. Be careful if you're free to play following these rankings as a quote-unquote who to build. This is because without a 5-star weapon like Staff of Thoma, Xiao's DPS falls off a lot, and Farazan needs to be C6 as well. Xiao also wants really highly upgraded talents. I mean, in turn you get like 150k plus plunges with a C0 Farina and C0 Xianyun, so I'd say it's worth it. I mean shoot, my highest has been 243k, but I have a C6 Farina and C2 Xianyun, so take that with a massive grain of salt. In any case, Xiao in the context of his tier list is incredible, but the moment we start taking accessibility into account, he drops off a lot. I'm also probably gonna get some comments asking why I think Xiao is better than Scaramouche. Well, first off, Xianyun, Scaramouche doesn't take advantage of her, Xiao does. Second off, if you get staggered once on Scara, which can very easily happen when shieldless, that's quite a DPS loss. Xiao also does significantly better in 2 to 3 target scenarios compared to Scaramouche, who isn't as good as Xiao when it comes to AoE. Xiao's DPR, damage per rotation, is also higher than Scaramouche's. I'm mostly addressing all this since the Xiao vs Scara debate is a constant topic of debate down below my tier list comments, but I do still stand firm on the idea that Xiao is a notch above him. Either way, second highest A tier in the context of this specific tier list. Xingqiu is a very good Hydra applicator with plenty of defensive utility who serves as a great option wherever you need good Hydra application. Yulon and Farina both being on your account do seriously negate his previously untouchable value, but regardless, he's still a wonderful option that is well worth the build, even in the modern day. Bottom of S tier. Bro, it's Xinyan, 0 DPS. This is a 4.8 tier list, not a 5.0 one, but if we think about Mualani, then maybe Xinyan could be at the bottom of C tier since she works nicely with her. But with the context of 4.8 in mind, and how low Xinyan's actual use cases are, she's gonna sit her butt down in D tier until the Shark Surfer comes out. Yae is a nice aggravate DPS to use a chunky upgrade over Keqing's damage. Cloran does negate her value though, since Cloran fixes pretty much every issue with aggravate. Yae is best in slot and Tighnari spread however, so there's another untouchable use case for her. And Tighnari is going to be a free option very soon. B tier. I haven't got much to say about Yanfei. Decent 4-star pyro DPS, can act as a shielder at C4, plus she can hold TDDS, which is cool because her shield also scales off of HP, so it's 2 birds with 1 stone. Though, much like Lisa, she's gonna be a damn ER solar panel when using TDDS over an ER weapon. C tier. Yao Yao was a great Dendro healer with high application during her burst. My main problem with her has never been her healing because it's very good. It's more so that she has to on-field to do it, which seriously negates the amount of effective use cases that Yao Yao can possibly have. She's a nice budget option as an on-field or a Nilou bloom if you use Candace, who can infuse Yao Yao with Hydro to generate more blooms as her burst applies Dendro. Great bloom unit, but outclassed by other amazing bloom healers such as Kokomi and Baizhu. Top of C tier. Yelan is still a top 5 meta character in my opinion, an absolute meta behemoth. Being a souped up Xingqiu++ is a crazy good thing to be, especially when you have a lot of damage to add whenever you're slotted into a team. Yelan's utility goes crazy hard, and she fits amazingly with modern meta units such as Arlecchino, Navia, and Alhaitham, and her ramping damage bonus buff is simply the cherry on top. Easily going into high S tier. The 4th best character in the game, in my opinion. I wouldn't even say that Yoimiya's main issue is being so single target locked anymore, because while that does hurt her a lot in Imaginarium Theater, that game mode isn't very hard in the first place and she'll still be good for the boss stages. And the Abyss is pretty much always very boss heavy now, with one full continuous side almost always being dedicated to boss chambers. Her issue is more so that she's extremely outclassed by any of her pyro DPS out there, including freaking Klee. You can't justify using Yoimiya over any of her DPS in the game. She also requires carry levels of investment to do your job at a mediocre level. Investing far less into an Arlecchino will yield you an infinitely more satisfying result. I'm usually a bit too harsh on Yoimiya, she can definitely still clear after all, but she definitely struggles more than other pyro DPS characters, and she just isn't worth the limited pulls anymore when Diluc, a standard 5-star, can clear significantly faster than her in a Xianyun plunge team. C tier. Yun-Jin has definitely gotten better in recent times, as Clorant can use up all her burst stacks. Effectively at that, since Clorant's hypercarry team is very good. She's also a nice use for Yoimiya if your Bennett is occupied on the other half of the Abyss, and Yun-Jin also isn't half bad with Scaramouche. She generally has the potential to become even better over time with the more normal attack-based DPSs that get added into the game that can use her. B tier. Xiangling is a character who definitely got better during Fontaine. Shoot, he'll be getting better during Natlan too, as he'll be usable with Mualani. He's a really solid pick with plenty of extremely good units such as Lyney, Nervalette, Arlecchino against dagger-heavy fights, Navia, etc. He's also really nice with Chiori who likes Geo constructs. Pair Chiori and Zhongli together to form a very formidable double Geo core that can be flexed into many different places. Great unit, happy that he came back so strong after being so bad during Sumeru. High B tier, though let me know down below if you think he should go into low A. And, well, there you have it everyone, my full pre-Natlan meta tier list. No, I'm not saying that I'm 100% correct, and tier lists are inherently flawed anyway, because everybody values different things depending on what kind of player you are. An S tier to me may be an A tier to you, and a B tier to me may be an A tier to you. For example, if you're somebody who struggles to play the game skillfully due to external issues, which is 100% valid, Zhongli and Baizhu may be your personal S tiers. If you like a simple and easy time, Raiden and Nervalette may be your S tiers. If you're a speedrunner, then Ganyu may seem a little low and Lyney is the god of everything to you. In any case, I hope this tier list was somewhat reasonable, and if you completely utterly hated it, then thank you for watching this delusional vitamin C filled liquid ramble this far. Hopefully this video was able to give you a decent estimate on the current state of the Genshin Impact meta before we head into the Nation of Pyro. This has been Juice, signing out, and the real S tier is the friends that we made along the way, right? Right? Please don't Focalors me for my rankings.